access. There we go.
Oh.
We got it. Someone's got it.
That was me.
Oh, perfect. Chris has full power right now.
Yeah, you're not a host.
Chris is power tripping. All right, well, we'll jump in. If anyone else comes in. Peter, do you want to watch the waiting room just in case anyone else comes in?
Yeah, sure.
So welcome, guys, to the football division meeting here for Forza Analytics Society. I'm Cole. I'm the president of the football division. I'm a sophomore in Gabelli. I'm a finance major. I think we always go around and introduce ourselves, maybe name, grade, major, and where you're from. I'm from Seattle, so that's the other thing. I'm a Seahawks fan. So what your favorite football team is. If you want to jump in on Chris, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll start. Hi, I'm Chris. I'm from Fordham, New Jersey. I'm actually a Cardinals fan, interestingly enough, even though I'm from New Jersey. I know that affects Cole. I don't think you knew that, actually.
I didn't know that about you, Chris.
I'm a Cardinals fan because my aunt used to live in Arizona, so she flew me out for a game when I was younger, and I just, I kind of fell in love with the team. But I love talking fantasy football, analytics specifically. And just football as a whole. Even though I was a basketball player, I just always had a love for football.
Great. Peter, you want to go next? Or Peter, did we lose Peter? We lost Peter. Anthony, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hey, I'm Anthony. I'm from Boston. I'm a freshman. So out of Boston, I'm a Pats fan. Disappointing year, but I gotta be grateful for all the years we had. So yeah, anything else? Did I miss something?
No, I think that should be it. What about Brad? Brad, you want to
go? How's it going? I'm Brad. I'm a little south of Boston, so I'm also a Pats fan. And we got third most cap in the league, so I'm thinking a big year next year.
It's to be painful if everyone here's a Pats fan or a Cardinals fan, and I'm sitting here the Seahawks fan. John, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I'm from New Jersey. I'm a Browns fan. My family's originally from Cleveland. And yeah, excited for tonight.
What about you, Peter?
Yep. Hey, guys. I'm Peter Majors. I'm the club president. I'm from New Jersey. I'm a sophomore, and I'm a Giants fan. Not a big football fan, but I follow the Giants from time to time. So,
and Peter's just here to make sure everything goes well.
Yeah.
Let's see who hasn't gone yet. Jack, have you gone yet?
Yeah, I changed my real name's Jack. My Zoom name I have is John to not confuse the professors. But
yeah, no worries. Got that all confused. Okay. Benjamin, have you gone?
No, I haven't. What were the questions?
Say what grade you're in, maybe what your major is, and where you're from, what your favorite football team is.
Yeah, my name's Ben. I'm from Rocky Hill, Connecticut. My major is finance, and my favorite team is the Steelers.
Nice. All right, we got Luke. Have you gone yet?
I'm from New Jersey. My favorite team is just my fantasy team, and yeah, I'm a freshman. From New Jersey.
Wait, have I asked Matt? Matt, have you gone yet?
No. What's up? I'm Matt. I'm from West Hartford, Connecticut. I'm in Gabelli, but I'm not really sure what major I want to choose yet. I'm a freshman. I'm a Giants fan. It's been a long, long time since we've been good. Not really, but felt like that.
I think that's everyone. Is anyone not gone yet? Missing anyone?
I haven't gone yet.
Oh, yeah. Other Matt. Okay.
Okay. My name is Matthew. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm intending on being a marketing major. And so I root for the Panthers, but I was also born in Boston, so I also like the Pats.
Nice. All right. So I was thinking we'd start off this meeting just talking a little bit about, I was going to do a quick intro into the main analytics stats people need to know. Talk a little bit about Football Outsider. Just give a little bit of background. That should be quick. And then we're going to talk a little bit about our articles that I'm working on, that Chris is working on, talk a little some article ideas maybe. and then we'll jump into just a little bit of group discussion for the last little bit of it. So Football Outsiders is basically the number one thing you need to know about if you are trying to look into football analytics. They're this massive football analytics database. They were founded back in, I think, 2003 by a couple of guys, and they got bought out by ESPN. Now they work exclusively with ESPN Insider. But they basically have created every single major sports analytics or football analytics stat that exists. And they're best known for creating DVOA, which is basically the football equivalent of WAR. I don't know if you guys are familiar with baseball. WAR, wins above replacement, but it's the most comprehensive stat for football. It measures player value in a way that no other stat does. With that being said, they have literally thousands of stats. If you just want to go up on their website and search up their glossary, it's pretty impressive. And they also have a lot of really good articles analyzing player success based off of those. So real quick, just want to talk about DVOA. It's basically how a player's value is measured, and it takes into account a million different variables on each play. They literally have it. Football Outsiders literally has a team of 100 people to watch every single game and watch every single player, and are tracking every single movement that player makes, what the result of every single play is, to be able to calculate DVOA. This is a big wall of text, but this is kind of how it's calculated. It literally takes every single play during the NFL season and compares each one to a league average baseline of how a league average player would perform based on that given situation. So they're not just measuring yardage, but also the yardage towards first down. So a quarterback throwing a first down on 3rd and 4 and getting 5 yards worth more than 5 yards on 1st and 10, and much more than 5 yards on 3rd and 12. In addition, red zone players are worth more than a lot of other plays, so they're able to measure red zone success. And DVOA is a percentage, so it's basically the percentage. By what percent are you better than the league average? So someone like Russell Wilson will have a DVOA of 20, 30, whatever percent. He's 30% better than whoever the league average quarterback is. Someone like Carson Wentz will have a DVOA of negative 20% because he's 20% worse, 20% worse than the league average quarterback. So one other stat that Football Outsiders has become really well known for is effective yards. You'll see a lot written about DVOA and effective yards in our articles. And if you are writing articles, you're going to find yourself doing a lot of research into these too. Effective yards basically looks at the likelihood of getting a certain amount of yards per attempt. So players with more effective yards than standard yards are better than players with less. And it's based off DVOA and how many yards players are getting through DVOA. There are a couple other stats. True ratings is super basic. You'll see it a lot for quarterbacks. So quarterbacks' true completion percentage factoring out unpressured throwaways and drop passes. So a lot of guys with really bad offensive lines, Russell Wilson, for example, as a Seahawk fan, I feel the need to defend him. His true completion percentage is a whole lot better than his regular completion percentage. His true passer rating is a whole lot better than his regular passer rating because his offensive line lets him down so often. And he's always making passes, scrambling on the run. You'll see guys with really good offensive lines, like Dak this year or last year, rest in peace, didn't have much deviation between his true completion percentage, his real completion percentage, because his offensive line is so good. So it gives a chance to take into account a little more. It makes a play a little more three-dimensional there. There's just a couple other quarterback stats. The quarterback division is the easiest division to look at from an analytics perspective because there are so many more quarterback and running back stats than there are for, say, an offensive lineman. So you can see supporting cast efficiency, which is how good an offensive player supporting cast was. They're all pretty self-explanatory. Accuracy rating is how accurate a player's passes are. Surprisingly, I was looking at player accuracy ratings, and Carson Wentz actually had a really solid accuracy rating. He was ahead of guys like Brady and there's one other guy that was really surprising. I think it might have been Murray. Sorry, Chris. Because and a big part of why he didn't succeed was because his receivers were so bad and his offensive line was so bad. But it's part of why I think that he actually could succeed with better coaching staff and maybe a couple of good draft picks in Indianapolis. So just to talk a little bit about how teams are using analytics successfully. I'm not sure if you guys have noticed this, how close you guys are been watching football, but teams have gone for it on fourth down a lot more this year than the year before, and a lot more the year before than the year before that. Because from an analytics perspective, if you're actually looking at the numbers, it does make sense to go on fourth down when you're in a certain part of the field. Same thing with a lot of coaches use an analytics-driven approach to whether or not they're passing the ball or throwing the ball. And most of the best coaches are recognizing when it makes sense to pass and when it makes sense to be throwing. Unfortunately for me, Pete Carroll doesn't really do that. He prefers to run the ball in the middle on 2nd and 10 and then go for a pass behind the line of scrimmage on 3rd down. And he's an example of a coach that really doesn't use analytics very well. So it's something that he's got to work on, and it's something that's been making Seahawks fans very frustrated. But guys like McVay have been really effective with their play calling. At the same time, draft picks, and we'll talk about the draft in a later meeting. This draft is going to be really interesting because of the rise of analytics this year. There's going to be a lot of players, especially in later rounds, that no one expected, but teams saw something about their route efficiency at the combine or other intangibles that are a little harder to measure. And then trades, teams are obviously measuring a player's analytics performance a lot more when they're making a trade. So just jumping into some articles that are being written. Right now, I'm working on an article that's about breaking down the flaws within win probability. I'm sure you guys have noticed the win probability graphics on games and how oftentimes they end up being wrong. There's a million examples of when a team had a 98, 99% chance of winning and blew it, notably the Falcons. In fact, the Falcons had a 95% or above win probability 7 times last 2 seasons in which they've lost. So breaking down why that happens and just taking a deeper dive. And Chris is working on 2 articles right now if he wants to talk about those.
Yeah, so the article I'm currently working on was the great development of Josh Allen, what happened between last year and this season. I'm really focusing on like how he changed from, a much better passer, right? He obviously improved in his accuracy and his deep pass throwing. But what a lot of fantasy analysts were concerned about with Josh Allen was his consistent rushing ability, because last year he rushed for over 510 yards and 9 TDs on the ground. So many were concerned that there'd be a negative regression from the next 2 years, but he actually kept those numbers up. He still had over 410 yards and 8 touchdowns. So he kept that up. And then his offensive line drastically improved. He had over like half a second average increased time in the pocket, along with a Pro Football Focus, which is another analytics-based website, that his line drastically improved from 21st to 10th in 2 seasons, which is great. And then I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, obviously Stephon Diggs coming in there, as an all-pro wide receiver definitely helps, as he had over 0.5 separation yards increase from his receivers last year to this year, which is also great. And then I started this one like earlier on the year, but now I've kind of like slowed it down a bit. But I started to find out ways you could predict late season fantasy football runs. So like you see these guys like this year's David Montgomery, who went absolutely bonkers in the fantasy playoffs, and hopefully he was on my team, but unfortunately I had Saquon, Nick Chubb to be in the year, so that wasn't ideal. But I noticed that like he had a really strong playoff schedule, which could have helped me win a championship if I actually did make the playoffs. But so there's plenty of other guys that like last year's like Ryan Tannehill and AJ Brown both went off after they had much better matchups and they started to get used to each other after Tannehill became the starters. So there's I'm looking for like a correlation in like an analytic to prove why you can recognize that certain players can have like good matchups and produce late in fantasy football playoffs. But those are the two
Yeah.
I'm currently working on.
So if any of you guys have an idea of an article that you're hoping to write, that you would like to write, we're always taking in new articles to throw up on our blog. If you guys just notice a kind of crazy stat that you saw, you want to throw it up on our Twitter, you can reach out to me and I'll throw it up on our Twitter. I'm just like always kind of looking for new stuff from you guys. I'll actually drop my email real quick in the chat. I realized I meant to do that. Second. So that's my email. If you guys ever want to reach out to me over email, if you have any article ideas, want me to edit something, or just have a little tweet or thought to send at me, feel free to shoot anything my way. I'm pretty active on email. Just curious, does anybody have any article ideas off the top of their head that they might be interested in writing?
Are there any players that like are exactly average when you're talking about DVOA? Like, is there like a baseline player?
Yeah, let me just see. Let's see. Let's see. I'm curious who it would be. I was actually thinking about that when I was giving examples. I'll find the most average.
I would say someone like Kirk Cousins. He just seems like he's probably the most average quarterback in the league. You know, doesn't stun too much, but he doesn't completely fail. So, but there's plenty of other guys you could think of that are completely average, I guess. Just off the top of your head.
I don't know that much about that stat, but does it apply to other positions as well, or is it just quarterbacks?
No, it applies to every position. It's DVOA.
How do they like make it like so it's similar for like wide receiver? Do they compare wide receivers to quarterbacks with that stat, or just stay with their own positions?
So there are a couple layers to it. Number one, it's like with baseball WAR, right? Like a pitcher's WAR is going to be different than a hitter's WAR. And it's just impacted by how valuable a pitcher is over a right fielder, over a designated hitter. So in some capacity, yeah, I would say that a wide receiver's DVOA is never going to be. It's hard to compare a wide receiver's DVOA to a quarterback's. With that being said, you'll see receivers that have DVOAs. I guess it's a comparison. It's a comparison to other players at your position. It's the value in comparison to other players at your position, or what the average is at your position. So you'll see receivers like a DVOA of 40 because there's so much more of a gap between the best wide receiver in the NFL, between someone like DeAndre Hopkins, and between these guys that are right off the practice squad dropping passes, whereas there isn't quite as much variation between quarterbacks.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Let's see. I'm looking up right now. And it looks like Bridgewater had a DVOA of -0.1 last year. So I would guess that's pretty darn close. That'd be a good example, and I would assume that Kirk Cousins is right around there. On that note, kind of hoping to open this up to like a roundtable discussion. Just to open it up, I mean, there's no real structure to this. But if you guys have any thoughts on how teams can maybe take advantage of analytics this offseason, maybe you guys' favorite team, a lot of Patriots fans here. Patriots have a lot of money and a couple of draft picks, how they can use analytics. Or even just like if you're frustrated like me that your coach doesn't use analytics well enough, speak up. If anyone has any thoughts?
I'd say I know it says for the third bullet point, like how can we use analytics to dominate fantasy football leagues? Obviously a basic stat line for most skill position players would be like yards, how much they get in total for a game. And I know some people look at, I'll give two examples of over time, like Jason Witten when he played and Larry Fitzgerald when he played. Like those are guys that kind of averaged around like 8-ish catches for like maybe 40, 45 yards, depending on like they'd range just over like 40 at least, but never over 100 a week. And so those are guys like in fantasy where if you wanted to get a guy for your utility spot, they could guarantee you between like 4 to 6 points but you just knew for a fact that it was going to be between 4 to 6 no matter what. So there's some guys where you could consider it to be like average. I don't know if that's average or below average, but like consistency, I guess. Like stats like that will show you consistency.
You actually bring up a good point because a lot of what ESPN does is they have consistency rankings, right? So like what made Christian McCaffrey in 2019 so powerful as a fantasy football star was that he was consistently getting 6 to 8 catches a game from a running back, along with his receiving yards, running yards and touchdowns. That's why he was just he had such a high floor, and that's what you want to look for in a guy like a flex guy. You said like a utility guy, a guy that can get you a nice floor of points. But another thing that I've started to like look at is another ESPN set actually was opportunity. So it's like how many times does a receiver get targeted a game, right? Because a guy could be more talented than another guy on let's say, like a perfect example, like Antonio Gibson and JD McKissick were two guys that saw like a plethora of catches out of the backfield. And that was the reason why they were so successful this year versus the guys that may be more talented but don't get the volume.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw, if you have your league on ESPN, there's that like normal distribution now on all the players' profiles, and it gives you like an average for where they're projecting the players to score, and then kind of like what Matt was saying, like a window or a range for what the scores can be, which is I think that's new this past season. So in terms of like analytics and fantasy football, I mean, I don't know how accurate it always was, but that's something new they added that was stat based, and it helped me a little bit.
I'm curious, how many of you guys have ever been on the Football Outsiders website? Other than Peter. Peter's got it. So I would suggest everyone just goes and like just gives it a check, reads their 3 or 4 most recent articles. Takes like 10 minutes on. It's pretty interesting the level of stats that they bring up. For you Patriots fans in the chat, how do you guys feel about Bill and his use of analytics, especially in the draft? He's had some rocky drafts recently. I'm curious what the consensus is among Pats fans. Nothing? Just silence. Andrew says he can't do any wrong ever. That's a bold take.
Yeah.
My Patriots fan roommate would beg to disagree, beg to differ.
Andrew, get on the mic.
Yeah, Andrew, tell us what you have to say. Walk us through that. Andrew's not
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, there it is.
Oh, we got Andrew. Couldn't help but notice that you said in the chat that he could do no wrong. I'm curious what your defense of the kicker from a D2 school in the 4th round was.
Oh, everybody makes mistakes sometimes, but he makes few and far between.
Fair enough. Andrew, how do you feel about his use of analytics?
Has this turned into a Bill Belichick bashing session?
No. I'm just curious because I've grown really frustrated with Pete Carroll and his lack of analytics usage over the years. And I'm curious if Pats fans feel the same way about Bill, if they wish he would use analytics a little more, or they're content with it.
I'm going to be honest, I'm not too familiar, but I will say that I'm a very big Bill Belichick fan, and there's just nothing else to say.
Fair enough. Any other Patriots fans have an opinion there?
I could say less more with the draft, but I know with Cam Newton, so obviously like I had for Carolina as well, so seeing him go to New England wasn't like too bad of a second option. But I know one thing that he figured is he's done it before with other players where he knows they could have like some off-field issues or like locker room issues where he understands where if he knows other teams are going to wait, he's going to see the value where Cam's going to look at being like, I was a former MVP. I went to the Super Bowl and all this stuff. I expect my value to be really high up. And the Patriots are just like Bill Belichick knows sometimes where if you just if you just hold out, you can always wait till like later in the year, and you can sign him for. He signed him for like just around $1 million instead of what could have been like 8 or 9. So he knows like if you play the long game, it can turn out well.
Just look what happened to Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
Didn't even get a snap in the Super Bowl, and he wanted $15 million a year.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, looking back on it, the fact that people like Cam were demanding so much money was laughable to say the least. And credit where credit's due, Bill did do a good job there of not overpaying. And just getting a quarterback for the year that was okay enough. The other interesting conversation is just looking at how we can use analytics for I don't want to say for gambling. For gambling. I don't know how many of you guys bet on football, but there's a huge market for utilizing analytics, looking at win probability in comparison to Vegas odds, looking at certain players, if you're betting on certain players' performance, looking at their DVOA to determine who's overrated and who's underrated when you're making those picks. Has anybody ever use analytics on something like that? A little bit.
If
I guess
I
I'm
want
the
to,
only one who has a real game.
okay.
What do you say, Chris?
If I want to jump in, during the Super Bowl, actually, I'm not like a big bettor myself because I know I'll get carried away thinking I know a lot when I don't. But, like I read an article about like Football Outsiders and like certain player props, and just reading like a guy like Shaquille Barrett, especially considering like, the Chiefs offensive line was like, falling apart, obviously, with Eric Fisher being out and Mitchell Schwartz being out. So like his over under for sacks was like 0.5, which is absolutely insane because he took over that game completely. But you can look at like other small player props, like, Travis Kelce was over under 100 yards. Many people will be like, oh, that's ridiculous. It's over 100 yards. But the Buccaneers were analytically proven to be poor against tight ends. So, just looking at little things like that, I'm not telling you to gamble or do anything because a couple of my friends would be like, oh, what's the lock? But, just looking at little analytic stuff like that, you can recognize some loopholes in the analytics database.
Especially with DraftKings. This is how I made my money off of DraftKings.
Yeah.
Promo code in the description.
Oh.
If you look at certain players who have been performing well and from an analytics standpoint, especially let's go back here. If you look at effective yards, a big part of DraftKings and fantasy sports is just their players' effective yards and their expected effective yards. But there's a whole host of fantasy football outsiders stats about future predicting how they'll do after their last game. And that's comes in handy for DraftKings. Again, not encouraging anyone here to gamble. Don't be like me. But if you do, it's good to check out their analytics profiles. I'll also say, if anyone is interested in single players, if they want to check out Player Profiler, search up and I'll link it. Certain player profilers are also very interesting. You'll get some surprises where like certain players are way less accurate or way worse in the red zone than you would have expected if you just search up like certain player stats. So Kyler Murray, way worse on Player Profiler than you think if you watch ESPN. Sorry, Chris, again.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any thoughts? Thoughts on these questions? Thoughts on articles? It's been about a half hour, so you can kind of get towards wrapping it up. But if anyone else has anything else to say.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. I think we should just stay a little bit further away from the betting aspect of things going forward. It's fun to joke about it, but I don't know if we're going to go down that route.
As president, Peter has to say that.
Executive order.
To keep us in line. All right. If nobody else has anything to say, it's really nice to meet all you guys. We'll have another meeting in 2 weeks, and we'll start lining up guest speakers coming out here in the semi-near future. So stay tuned to the email for that. I've got a couple people I've been talking to. So fingers crossed that all goes through. I look forward to seeing you guys at those meetings. Anything else you want to say, Peter?
No, I think that's it. It's a good turnout, guys. I guess just can't wait to see what we got for the rest of the semester.
Yeah, I'll stop the screen share. It's nice to meet all you guys, and I'll see y'all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.